Everybody, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Cupid. I'm your host, Marla Martenson, and I'm super excited today because I've got Louise Spalding with me. Hey, Tina!
Hi, nice to see you.
Okay, you guys who know me know that my favorite topic is channeling. All right, you guys know I love all the mystical stuff, and I saw Tina on YouTube. She channels a group of guides called Ananda, and she also channels Jesus. So I'm so excited. All right, we're going to get right into this. So first I want to talk about how this all came about, how you became a channel. I know it's the Course in Miracles started it all, but just tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I had a really challenging time being on the planet, perfectly honestly. I had a hard time with the idea of mortgages and jobs and marriage and living in this body. I had a difficult time from early, I would say from my teens. Really when I, hit puberty was when I really started to look at the life that we were intended to live. And I started to really not think this was a nice thing. I won't go into my teens and 20s. It was a bit of a disaster, I have to be honest. I had a really hard time with my mind and got into a lot of dark places with my mind. I had eating disorders as a young woman. I attempted suicide even as a young woman. I really, really had no peace. And that was really what started, got a siren going. That's really what started my spiritual search, I think. In my 20s, I started to read. And I'm like you, I was intensely drawn to channel material. That was just my passion. I read all the Seth books, Jane Roberts Seth books, in my 30s. Yeah, I guess must have been my early 40s, actually. I read the Conversations with God books, the whole lot. And at 42 or 43, A Course in Miracles came into my hands. And it was a very low time. I had had my second divorce. My children were living with their dad, and I had a lot of guilt and shame about the choices that I'd made to actually look after myself is what I had done. But I started reading A Course in Miracles and very quickly began to have exceptionally unusual spiritual experiences, out-of-body experiences that I'd never had before, leaving my body and being given messages and having experiences of big spiral galaxies, fully conscious and awake. But I went on a 10-year journey with that book. But what happened as I began to practice the lessons of A Course in Miracles was that I started to have this strange experience of peace. I had never had peace of mind in my entire life. And the more I experienced peace, the more I wanted it, and the less tolerance I had for being upset. And so the practice in the book is to deal with the upsets in your mind, whatever they are. There is no small upset according to this philosophy. But it shows you systematically and day by day how to explore your mind. And of course, the thing that some people don't know is that the voice of A Course in Miracles is Jesus' voice. He is the teacher. So basically, you're going on an exploration of your inner world with Jesus as your guide and your teacher and your security, if you will, because essentially what we have is we're living the problems of our life. We are creating the problems of our life, so it's very hard for us to solve them. Anyway, at the end of that 10 or 12-year process, I felt like I wanted to teach Course in Miracles lessons. And I kept going to organize it, and then I would kind of get a no. I'd be like, well, that's strange, because I believed in it so much. I'd had such a transformative experience. And I had a vision one night. I was having a difficult forgiveness practice with a deep family issue. You know, the course takes you through these levels of difficulty until you're really dealing with some of those fundamental core issues that cause us our most of our suffering. And I had a vision, and in this vision, I was shown a landscape. Interestingly enough, it was an English village. I'm from England originally, and over this village was a cobweb. And in my mind, I heard a voice for the first time, really, that said these ideas and beliefs that you're holding that are causing you this upset are contaminating your entire life, like this cobweb is touching every single thing in this village. And the beliefs I had was that I was unlovable and that I wasn't beautiful. These were some of the core beliefs that I had from a young age, being raised in our society. I had sort of taken it a bit too far, right. And these were really troubling for me. So the following morning, all my conflict was gone. It was an interesting experience, but I still had these habits of thinking about this person in a particular way. And so I spent the next 6 months in a very, very deep prayer and meditation practice. I'd be praying and meditating when I was walking, for example, and offering up these thoughts to be healed. And that was in the November, and in the June, I laid down one day for a nap, and I say all hell broke loose, all heaven broke loose, actually. I began to get a feeling at the bottom of my spine, this sort of throbbing, blissful, very sexual feeling in actual fact. And it rose up my back. It took about 20 minutes to go up my back. But all the time this was happening, my body was moving spontaneously in a state of ecstasy. So my shoulders were being moved, my hips were being moved. I could feel that I was actually having some kind of energetic physical adjustment.
Would that be a Kundalini awakening? Would that be?
Yeah, that was the beginning of the Kundalini awakening. Well, this happened 3 times in about an hour and a half. And at the end of it, I burst into tears. It was just the most amazing experience. And I knew what it was. So I was really surrendered to it. I knew exactly what it was. That happened to me every time I laid down for a month.
Wow.
I had these huge waves of energy, these huge ecstatic experiences. And every time I laid down, it happened. At times I would have to say no because I needed to sleep or whatever. But it took me into this state of consciousness that was what I think enlightenment must feel like. It was a complete state of bliss and oneness with everything. I would walk along the street and I would smell a flower and I'd be in this orgasmic kind of state the whole time. And then slowly I started to come back into what I would consider a more normal state of consciousness. But there was this feeling that somebody wanted to say something. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me how I knew, but somebody wanted to speak. And I had a friend who was a channel, and she was doing an automatic writing workshop. And she said, come on over, let's see if we can find out who this is. And so I went there. I was afraid I was going to have this, these orgasmic body things going on in the class, but they were good. And I started to write with a pencil straight away. First of all, it just looked like scribbles, and then I would turn the page, and over about a 2-hour period, I started to write this word Ananda, and I just wrote Ananda, Ananda, Ananda. Mm-hmm. And that was it for that little session. But later that evening, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat by myself and I picked up the pen, and they started to write for the first time as Ananda. Mm-hmm. And they introduced themselves. They said, we are Ananda, we are your guides and teachers, and this is your life's purpose. We're going to write books through you. And at the same time, they did tell me that I had been a shepherd boy, a goat herder, and I had followed Jesus. Oh, okay. That I had followed him when he was teaching, and that he and I were friends, that we would sit around the fire at night and talk. They said I was about 17 or 18 years old at that time, and that we had become friends. They didn't tell me I would be channeling him at that point because they said I wouldn't have done it. They said the idea would have been too much for me. But that's how it started.
And then when they started channeling through you, the speaking, did that come on your own? Do you hear, because I know many channels and so they have so many different ways. Some of them don't even know what's being said and then they come to light. It seems like when I watch you on the videos, you hear it all too because you comment on it.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I describe it, I say my normal consciousness is like driving the car yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm channeling, it's like being in the back seat and somebody else is driving and you can't hear everything they say. You kind of can, but they're in control. And that's kind of how I liken it. Depending on who I'm channeling, when I'm channeling Ananda, I think I'm about 25%. Jesus is much stronger. I usually don't recall what he said. When he's speaking, I'm hearing it though. I can actually ask a question in my mind when they're channeling and they will answer it. So,
yes. Now, okay. And so for instance, so what you were doing first was automatic writing, which I liken to what I'm doing,
yeah.
although I use a board, and people who know me know I use this board with the planchette, so it's writing. So it's basically, I would say it's kind of a channeling automatic writing. Now, if I wanted to take it off the board, which I want to take it off the board, but if I'm by myself, I don't have anybody really who's going to sit with me or work on it. So would you say, or even when you're alone, do you put your recorder on so that you can know afterwards what was said? Or?
Yeah. If I'm asking a quick question, sometimes in the morning I'll ask Ananda just to give me a pep talk. If I'm feeling a little lost or a little confused, I get a little pep talk and I won't record it necessarily. But sometimes if I'm asking about a specific problem or question that I have, I'll record it so that I can hear, because I do forget it. It's very much like it's very much like trying to remember a dream.
Yes.
You know how when you can have a dream and then you can lose it, it can be gone and you can't get it back. And it's very much like that kind of quality to it. But what happened with Ananda was they started longhand first, then they started to type. Mm-hmm. And then about 3 months into the process. So for that first 3 months, they were writing Making Love to God, which was the first book that they were bringing through. And they were giving me a lot of personal information about what to eat, how to exercise, what not to watch on television, things like that. So I sort of had these two streams of information. And then in the October, they said, and now we're going to prepare you to speak for us. So they initiated it. And for about a week, I would wake up in the middle of the night, sitting up in bed talking. Okay. And they said that they did that just to bypass the conscious mind. And then all through this time, I was laying down for an hour a day and having this ecstatic energy work done on my body. I'd given them permission to what they said they were doing. They said, we're reintegrating the matrix of your body and we're reconnecting everything that's been disconnected. Mm-hmm. And so that was what they were doing in those energy sessions. And so I laid down one day during this week to have my energy session, and a whole bunch of stuff happened in my throat chakra. And then I started to speak and they gave a lecture on unconditional love. And that was it. They were kind of off to the races then. I would channel them about 5 or 6 times a day. We were continuing to type the book. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't let me do any recordings early on because the voice sounded quite mechanical. So they said they don't want any bad recordings to show up. I thought it was quite funny because it sounded kind of vain, but
yeah, you have these wonderful books, and I'm so I love reading channeled books. There's more and more channeled books now, and people who are doubtful about whether people are really channeling. I mean, like you said, and I think other people have said, you really couldn't be just making this up on the spot. I mean, it's just,
I'm not that smart.
And that's what most people say. It's like, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. And
not
who can come
smart.
up with this language and this whole, it's just too much. And the things that I will channel my angel and then write down and type, because I'm writing a book, not a whole book, but I have things, and I'm like, read it later, and I'm like, wow, that's so profound, and I wasn't making this up. So
it's I used to have dreams about channeling when I was younger, and of course in hindsight they said this was part of my destiny to do this work. So a lot of people are starting to channel, and I think that's really exciting because that's what they're saying. They're saying this looks unusual. This should be normal.
It's so, you just made me think of something when I was a kid. I mean, I didn't think of it this way, but for a while my parents thought maybe I was possessed because they'd, like around 10 years old, they'd come in to check on me and sleep, and I'd sit straight up and I would start, but it was another language. I spoke another language.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, she's speaking in tongues. And then they'd say, is she possessed? What's going on? And then I had a boyfriend I lived with for 3 years and I was married to. So early 20s, my boyfriend would say, you talk in your sleep. You speak some weird language I've never heard of.
Oh,
and so I had asked somebody who channeled their entity, I said, what is that from, do you think? And they said it could be residue from another lifetime. They weren't sure, but now
preparation for this one.
Maybe it could be somebody was channeling through, but it was some other language. Maybe an extra. And then some people are channeling extraterrestrials, like Bashar. He's on another frequency and planet. Ananda is more like Abraham, right? It's a collective.
Well, if you listen to Ananda introduce themselves, they do talk about other star systems.
Mm-hmm. So
they do talk about that. Okay. So. They are a combination of all different kinds of beings, apparently. And I think this is an intuition of mine. I think as we go into this new world that's coming, I think we're going to see that some of the beliefs we've held about what spirituality is and what highly evolved consciousness is are going to start to change a little bit. I do believe that some of the contact or some of the spiritual experiences that people have had have actually been contact with higher frequency extraterrestrial beings. Mm-hmm. I do believe that. So I think we're going to be expanding our understanding of what consciousness is, what our understanding of what life is, and what wisdom is. I think we're in for a really interesting time.
And frequency, and I know my angel says, she says, I'm happy to be connecting from the 7th dimension. So there's different dimensions. And it's interesting because my husband's really into astronomy. He studies the stars and the planets. He loves that. And when I talk about extraterrestrials, he says, yes, but there probably is life out there, but they could never, it's too far. They couldn't get here. And I start talking about, yes, but it's on different dimensions and frequencies, and that's how they're coming through. He can't accept or grasp that. We have a difference.
Yeah, that really, I mean, that's an interesting discussion because that really is the linear materialistic mind arguing for those limitations. Mm-hmm. That's the world we've been raised in. That's the scientific method that we've been taught. And all of that, all of our societal training is based on church teaching. Those are the building blocks of our society. Christian teachings, as taught by the old way, are really the cornerstones of our society. We've forgotten that. We think we're a modern society. We think of all these things. But as soon as you start getting into spiritual matters and non-physical teachers, trust me, I know, because I tell people what I do, you see the look of fear come over their face. You see either people are incredibly interested or they want to get out of the room right now.
Yes, because I have this question all the time. If I say, and I don't tell a lot of people, but, I don't hide it if I'm on my board. Yeah, but how do you know it's not a demon coming through pretending to be an angel? Because demons pretend to be angels. How do you know it's not an evil spirit? That's immediately they think of, instead of like, oh, how cool, an angel. It's like, but how do you know? Yeah. So what would you say?
Well, I just say to people when they, because I have had quite some interesting comments on YouTube from the Channeling Jesus stuff. And I say to them, listen to the message. Right. All you have to do is listen to the message to know that this is a love-based, high-frequency message. There's never been one single negative, accusing, attacking phrase in all of everything that's come through. We can't say that about a lot of other people and things that we believe in and that we support. I mean, if you look at our politics, our governments, they're not based in love. They're not based in forgiveness. They're not based in unconditional kindness. Yes. And so that's my argument is, to quote Jesus, is you look at the fruit of the tree. Is it good?
Yeah, my angels always brought wonderful, beautiful messages. I love you and positive. So why would a demon pretend for 2 years and just give good messages? It doesn't make any sense.
I think that's really one of the examples of the fundamental teachings that have carried through our society from the church that really prohibited people from doing this, but for a particular purpose.
Yes.
They wanted the business themselves.
They didn't want us to go to a direct line. They wanted us to go through the priest.
They didn't want people to connect with spirit directly, because that meant you were going to become wise. You were going to learn about higher wisdom, and you were going to become more empowered, because that basically is what Jesus' message is that's coming through the teachings that he's bringing through me right now, is about this amazing connection we have to divine power that is our right, and that, of course, it comes through several different channels in us. One of them is sexual energy. One of them is our creativity. And it's really interesting that these kinds of things were prohibited by the church.
Well,
because they were a direct access point to higher mind.
Yes, and in the new book that you challenged, which I love, Jesus, My Autobiography, I mean, it has everything in there that I always felt. It just was like, oh, yes. The fact that a lot of this, because how could a book be not have been edited, or how could it be absolutely accurate? How could, after translations and all these men, all the fingers in the pot and putting things together, could it be accurate? But people will still hold that onto that and say every word is true, and this is the word of God, and this is how it is, when there's no proof. And with all this channeling, which I believe, we're getting the real deal here.
I think we're getting the real deal. And I look at how it feels as it's coming through. I'm working on the fourth book right now, which is about love. It's called Love and a Map to Unaltered Souls, which is a beautiful title. It's their title. And they're talking about all of the different ways that we can love and find love, and actually redefining love. But as I'm channeling this book, I'm filled with love. It's this amazing vibration of excitement, anticipation. It's sharing the material. Like today, I put something on Facebook because it was such a beautiful passage that I had to share it. I was like, oh, I got to let people read this. I just go by how I feel, and I go by how I used to feel. When I believed in the world and money, and if I was thinner, I was more valuable. If I only had the right shoes, everything would be okay. When I believed in that belief system, I was a very, very unhappy person, and I was a very self-loathing person. As I've gone through this evolution myself, and it's been a huge learning curve to channel this material and to get used to bringing these beings through. But as I've gone through that journey, I have come to love myself and appreciate myself and experience a peaceful mind. And these are the real consequences that I want to share with people, is that, yes, it's frightening when they start asking you to quit coffee and exercise more and turn your television off and all of these sorts of things that are normal in our society. But normal is not natural, and normal is not making us very happy.
Yeah, as women, even though, and I fall in that trap, even though I do like myself, I work on self-love, I'm always like 5 pounds too heavy. And I'm not a big person, but how many women, it's always like, I just need to lose 10 pounds and I'd be happier, that whole, and then I live in Los Angeles, I'm a matchmaker, and the women who feel that, they've got to have the fake breasts and the pumped up lips and the blonde hair or this certain Gucci bag or drive a certain car, it's so wrapped up in this outer stuff that they think is going to make them happy, or finding the right partner who's wealthy. Where I love the messages that you're bringing through of this, everything's from within, and what we don't need all.
Well, let me tell you, this new book, Jesus is laying out. He's really he's talking about equality in this book. He's talking about equality as our greatest demonstration of love, and he's going into how our society creates victims and perpetrators, and how that plays out in our intimate love relationships. So he's really going into some good stuff about why we aren't able to find love, because that's really the big quest.
He's going to help me. Book's going to help me with my matchmaking. This is great.
Absolutely. This book is going to, it'll have to be it's
going to be a required
read for your customers.
It's going to be a required reading. Now I want to ask one more thing, and then I know you're going to channel, which is exciting. So for me, I've always been lucky that I've been into health. I mean, like, even when I was just going to college, I was taking these courses, French, dance, and stuff. But my spare time, I was going looking up nutrition books, and I always like to work out. So for me, being a vegan, it's very easy. It's like I like to feel good. I don't want to eat junk, but so it was when I had to raise my frequency, I did go pure vegan, and I noticed, and I never ate much animals anyway, but I really cut out the cheese and whatever. The alcohol, menopause took care of that, the hot flashes, being drenched, all that. I was like, quit the alcohol. But I want to talk to you about how important diet is, what it does to us, and that damn coffee. I'm still on and off with the coffee because our culture, more than anything else, is Starbucks, have a coffee. I'm a writer. What goes better with writing? Coffee. All the.
Tell me all about it. I know.
Right. So just discuss a little bit about how important the diet is to raise our frequency and connect.
Well, what they're saying is that early on in our spiritual journey, that's one of the greatest ways that we can affect our frequency. The teachings that are coming through me are what are called non-dualistic teachings. So I can go into that a little bit just to help explain, because we are materialistic physical beings, or we believe we are. We're actually spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we're trained to focus on the material. We're trained to focus on our bodies. We're trained to focus on the solid objects in the world rather than the intangible emotions and things like that. And so we are deeply trained to work within the physical. What they're trying to do is to bring a sort of a double-pronged approach where they're working with us as within the beliefs that we hold at the moment. So a lot of us are trained. We know what good food is. We know what healthy food is. Well, actually, that's not true. Some people think a steak is healthy, but they're also, forgiveness is the most powerful transformer of your frequency. That is the one that they really want us to work with. And yet it is intangible given our training. So I think one of the things that Ananda has said to me is part of the food issue is the demonstration of discipline that it requires for the mind, because they're always working with our minds. They want us to master our minds. And guess what? Our behavior comes from within our mind. Everything that we do, whether we eat meat or drink coffee, is a behavior that's being generated from within your consciousness. You're doing it for a reason. Otherwise, you'd be doing something else. Yes. So what they're saying is that the physical demonstration of what you're choosing to put in your body is a demonstration of your belief system. And that's what they want us to understand, is that everything we do is arising from what we believe is good for us on some level. Whether it is good for us or not, that's what they're trying to get us to see. So in the beginning stages, they say the food issue is a big one because there are some really low frequency things that we do and are doing as a culture that are really unnatural. So we're looking at bodies that have evolved over millions of years, literally, and we have in the last 50 or 100 years completely changed what's going in there. And they're saying go back 200 years, pretend you're living somewhere 200 years ago, and that's what you eat. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to analyze it. Just make that journey back 200 years. We know everything was organic.
Yes.
That's the first thing. We know that animals were living in fields with families. Mm-hmm. People would go out and pet their cow in the morning and milk her. Mm-hmm. So there was organic, wholesome, high-frequency milk. It wasn't milk that was produced in an industrial way. Everything was whole in that sense. The bread that you were eating was milled locally. There was no bleaching. I mean, really, when you think about that 200-year journey, most of what we do as Westerners is off the table.
Oh, it's
the box of cornflakes, the pre-packaged fruit juice that is coming from nowhere near where you live. All of these things become unacceptable. And I think that's really what I'm trying to do, is to say, is what I'm buying, would I be able to get that 200 years ago? So I'm like, yes, I have a yam in my hand. I could get an organic yam. Okay. But essentially what I've done is I've stopped going down the meat aisle unless I'm in an organic, humanely raised aisle. And I don't go down those middle aisles. Everything that's canned, everything that's boxed.
And even, it's all about money, as we know. Even if it says organic eggs or cage-free, the cage-free is still a nightmare for chickens.
They get an extra 2 inches. They get an extra 2 inches,
Right. It's because legally, I think Erin Janis, who does some great videos on this, she says all cage-free has legally, they just have to have a little door this big so that they could go outside, but they could never get outside. It's an absolute nightmare. And for me, I love animals, so I'm not going to eat an animal no matter how they've been treated. But I will.
But a lot of people do. And it's an interesting conversation because they have to have some help in going through this process.
Exactly. Now, my point on this is not to judge people who are, but this was for me. I can't because I love animals. But I will say that if somebody is eating, the way they are treated in these factory farms, the frequency that these animals, the torture, the fear, the absolute hell that they're living. I think Ananda speaks with this, or Jesus, tell me if I'm right. I believe that the war, the anger, the outbursts, it has to do a lot with how, on a daily basis, this horrible frequency that the animals are dealing with.
Well, one of the things that they talk about, and this is really the non-dualistic teaching. So a dualistic teaching, which is most spiritual teachings, is that you're an individual, you're living in an objective world. That means the world has really nothing to do with you. You're having your experience. Everyone else is having their experience. There's good, there's bad. I'm a little individual in this great big old world. That's kind of where most dualistic teachings function. Non-dualistic teachings are telling us that every single thought, feeling, emotion that we have is what is creating the world in which we live. Mm-hmm. And so it's a self-reflective world. There is literally nothing that I feel that is not going to be reflected back to me. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. The world is showing us our state of mind. And that's really the big part of the non-dualistic teaching, is that when you look at what is happening out there, most of us in our separated consciousness, and this is really a big part of the teaching here, most of us in our separated consciousness have a self that we've kind of accepted. We think we're kind of good people. We try and be loving and we try and be kind. And yet we go unconsciously and buy a pork roast or something like this. And we are literally unconscious of the suffering that is bringing that piece of meat to the table. Mm-hmm. And this is what they're asking us to look at. They're asking us to look at, can we say we're loving mm-hmm. when we're turning a blind eye to the horrors that are happening in those places? Can we? I don't think we can.
No,
I've lived in a small rural place, and there are organic farms, and there are sheep out there leaping around in the daffodils, for goodness sake, and they have a different kind of experience. And Ananda has said we don't need to eat meat. If you choose to eat meat, please make sure it's humanely raised and humanely killed.
Yeah, which is very hard to do in this. It's very hard to do in this country. Very hard to do, but
well, if you look at it globally, there's something like 4 billion animals killed every year, and it's a horrific number, and there's a horrific amount of suffering. But the other thing is we mustn't dwell on the negative. We must do we must support what we want to grow.
Yeah, you said, okay, because I listen to you guys, I listen to Tina every night when I go to sleep, so I'm getting really good. So they say, I don't know if it's Jesus and Ananda talk all the time, sometimes I put on my Facebook page these horrific slaughterhouse videos and stuff.
You're not allowed to do that anymore.
Right, I'm not allowed, and I realized this. I realized it because I thought if one person could maybe decide not to participate in this from seeing it, but it's so hard I can't even look at it. And one of my friends did turn vegan, but I decided because it's just too. So they said, look at like my little Macy here. Love the animals that you have. Maybe volunteer at a shelter. Put that good energy and happiness of what's going on,
And
right?
also, I mean, I've seen a couple of videos lately of cows that are being released from
I
prison.
know.
And they are kicking. I mean,
They're
they're such
kicking
joyful videos.
Joyful.
And you know in the back of your mind, what has caused that joy. It was the loss of, they didn't have freedom. But to put that video on and to support those places, those farms that are freeing the animals, those places that are helping elephants get out of prison. Those are the things that really lift you into a joyful place. And that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this false lesson that we've been given in our society, that if you're looking at suffering and you're like, oh my God, it's so terrible, that makes you a good person. It doesn't. What it does is it lowers your frequency. It doesn't help the situation at all. Because you, as
there's nothing I can do about it.
But the truth is, you can do something about it when your frequency gets high enough. You start to have more influence. You start to tap into inspiration and higher mind that you can't tap into when you're in a depressed, low place.
Right. Okay. I have. Maybe you can answer this. If not, the full answer we can ask when you channel. But this is my big challenge. So forgiveness.
Yes.
How can I forgive? And I even have said I am ashamed to be a human because of the way my fellow humans are treating terrorists, or treating or child abusers, or child traffickers, or porn, or the animals. How people work, how all of these horrible things. How can I forgive those people for being, how can I send love to them and at a certain way? Okay, I'm sending love. I'll send some Reiki energy and be all good. But really deep down, I think they're horrible. How can I...
yeah, you're just really lying about being forgiving.
Right. I mean, I want to forgive, but it's like, what are you, what are we the same species? How can one person not want to hurt anything and another person purposely go do it? Then there's people in the middle who are like, well, I know what's going on, but I want my crispy bacon, or I want my pork chops. So too bad if they suffer. I don't have to think about it. So there's all these, it's a spectrum, and the humans are so different, and then the animals are not. But so anyway, I have a big struggle with it.
Yeah. You and everyone. Forgiveness. So I'm just going to explain a little bit, because the forgiveness that we're talking about here is a demonstration of your understanding of the laws of creation. So this is what, and I'll let them talk about it too. But really, what we're doing when we begin our forgiveness practice, what we do is we begin to go inside our mind, and this is where the lessons of A Course in Miracles are your training program. What you're asking yourself to do is to forgive with an untrained mind.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it is basically impossible, because we have not only been taught to judge and to hate as a form of self-expression, but we are living in what's called a separated state. So the concept behind these teachings is that we have come into a world of separation, and it's demonstrating that frequency all the time. Our lives are demonstrating this separated from love frequency. So the principle is that at one point we were in unity with love, or God, if you want to call it that. And through some strange process, we have come down into separation. And it's demonstrated by our separate bodies. We all look like we're separate, all the separate things that we see out in the world. And that frequency of separation is kind of the status quo of this place. So people judging somebody is a demonstration of separation. You're different than me. I'm better than you, or worse than you. It doesn't matter. Syrians are this, or Africans are that, or whatever the judgment is the natural frequency of this place of separation. So the forgiveness practice that the Course is teaching you, and that Jesus taught when he was here, is that if you understand that this world is reflective, that the cruelty that is out there is the cruelty that's going on in all of our individual minds, creating this world, creating all the bad guys. Now, the first thing that the mind does is says, well, I don't have a cruel mind. I'm not hateful. But when you actually begin to do the lessons of A Course in Miracles, what you begin to see is that the mind is very judgmental, it's very attacking, and it is not that loving. Yeah. We tend to have a social face, which is kinder and sweeter and gentler. But when you actually begin to go into your mind and look at your thoughts, now you have something like 40,000 thoughts a day. Most people have no idea what they're thinking about. But when you go into your mind and you begin to look at the thoughts that you're having, what you realize is that you're judging people all the time. You're in fictitious arguments with people all the time. There's a lot going on in there. And when you begin to go into that process, you start to have a realization that there is actually kind of an unloving frequency contained within your own inner world.
Right.
And that's what's generating the unloving world that you're seeing out there. But because we aren't taught that we're creators, because we aren't taught that what we think and feel is being reflected back to us, we think it's an objective world. We think those people have nothing to do with us. But what the Course teaches is that you must go in and deal with the unloving thoughts in your mind. The very fact that you're judging all those people is a testament to your belief in separation. It's a testament to your belief that we aren't all connected. And it's also a testament to our belief that if I judge you, it doesn't really do anything. Actually, it does. It creates hatred out in the world. It creates war out in the world.
So even when we're judging somebody who just, a terrorist who chopped off someone's head or shot up a school, if we're saying, even if we're judging that, that's us putting out more negativity.
We're perpetuating the idea that those people are of less value or not godly or not worthy in some way. They've committed a sin. Yeah. This idea of committing a sin, there's a whole philosophy that we can go into for hours and hours and hours. But really, when you are asked to forgive, what you're being asked to do is demonstrate that you understand that the only thing that's lacking here is love. That's what this world needs. And if you're judging somebody, you're not loving them. If you're forgiving them, you're demonstrating that you understand that love is the solution. Attack is not the solution. And that's what we live in. We live in a world of attack. You can see it on your television screens. But also what most of us don't know is that we're living in a very judgmental and attacking mind. And that's where the difficult work comes, because we have to stop blaming and pointing a finger, and we have to go inside and we have to begin to work with our own minds, our own thoughts, and our own belief systems. And that's time consuming, and we're not very patient with things like that. We don't really like it. We'd rather point the finger and say, you're bad, but we really don't understand that we suffer for doing that, and we continue to perpetuate this world of separation and lack of love.
And so, circling back around to the food, since we started with the animals, so they had said, this week there's so many things to branch off on. But so the frequency, very important to have a clear channel of because all these processed foods, animal products, which they pump with hormones and it's acidic and all this stuff, and then the coffee and alcohol. So if you can clean your body out, maybe do a cleanse and get it real clean for people who are wanting to raise their frequency and connect.
I think the thing is to really bring it back to this simple thing.
Right. Is
this a loving food product or not? Is it raised with love?
Is it nourishing my body, right? Is it nourishing?
Am I being loving to my body by putting this in my body? It's a really simple question.
Okay.
If you're looking at a packet of cheesies, it's a very clear no. If you're looking at an organic egg that was raised by a very happy chicken, yes, you can see that chicken. So it's a really simple thing. We get caught up in all of the minutiae of the details and the chemicals and the this and the that. But the question is this raised in love? Is this going to add love to my body?
And that's why, so the reason I'm really asking this is for people who want to connect maybe with their angels or channel or can get more psychically open. It's all about frequency of the food. What you're putting in is what
it's one of the aspects. They don't want us to continue to be obsessed with the physical and material world and our bodies.
Okay.
This is actually one of the aspects of separation that causes us a lot of suffering, our belief in our body.
Okay.
And our worshipping of the body. So It's one of the facets of their, teaching. But what they've said is take it slowly. The first thing to do is to halve your meat consumption, double the quality. Seek out a place where you can buy organically raised meat. And so the first argument always is it costs too much. Well, their argument is eat half as much.
Yeah, or cut it out. Yeah.
They dismiss that argument completely. If you're spending $50 a week on industrially raised meat, spend $50 a week on organic meat and cut back your portions.
Because we eat too much anyway. Our portions could be cut in half.
And if you can only get 2 portions for $50, then that's what you eat.
Yes.
They say if you've got an entire unhealthy diet, because a lot of people are eating boxed cereals and processed food, is they said pick one thing that you eat a lot of. Let's say you have a cereal for breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
Take that cereal and go, okay, I need to find a really healthy organic replacement for this one thing that I'm going to enjoy. So go on a research project and find out that organic product that you can eat happily, so that you're not even trying to break a habit at that point. You're actually just shifting from a low frequency food to a high frequency food. And they said, do that. And then a couple of weeks later, pick another product. So you're going to slowly, and they said
slowly
if it takes
wean it off, right?
3 years even.
Yes. I have a friend who drinks Diet Coke all day long every day, and I'm very concerned about her. And I've mentioned it a few times, but, I try to mind my own business. But at the same time, this person wants to release some weight, has hormone issues, mood swings and some health issues. So, of course, I know that would help immensely, but it seems like a lot of people are stuck with these diet drinks that chemically, I guess, they've just got a hold of.
Well, they're addicted to them. I mean, they're highly addictive in their chemical makeup.
Yeah.
But this is one of the difficult things about this teaching is we have to stay on our path. We have to send love to people. We have to demonstrate what we do. To the best of our ability.
Yes.
I want to make clear here that I'm not perfect at any of this by any stretch of the imagination, as anyone who knows me knows. But you do your practice. You do your forgiveness practice. You do your prayer practice. You eat the way you know that you should eat, and you just demonstrate it. I have actually been affected by having friends who very quietly ate their salads while I was eating something much less healthy. And over time, it made an impact on me. There's no doubt about it. I would go over to the house, open the fridge. Oh, there's only organic stuff in there. Okay. But those demonstrations over time do affect other people, much more so than attacking them with our egos, because our ego is at play when we're judging somebody. It's always at play.
Yes.
Is how can we add love to the mix? How can you add love to the mix when somebody you love is eating poorly? You can bring healthy food into their world,
right? Just
as a quiet demonstration of your belief. You're holding a different belief, and that in that moment, you're giving them the possibility of learning something or holding a new belief. It's all about beliefs, but if you attack someone's belief, they will defend it to the death.
Right, like if you have someone in your life who smokes.
Own new evolving self.
Like cigarettes, for example. If someone, you're like, what are you doing, and you feel like you need to help them because they're, whatever, your mother, your father, your brother, your husband, if they're smoking or drinking a lot of alcohol, you want to say, hey, let me help you. But I think I've learned you just have to let them, they're grown people, they know it's not a good choice, and you have to leave them on their path,
they
right?
They have the same information as you.
Yes.
They have, and the other thing that's really, demonstrated in these teachings is that you have no idea what their spiritual path is. You have no idea what their incarnational history is. You have no idea what their destiny is. You have no idea what their relationship with spirit is. And really, it's none of our business.
Yes.
My business is my relationship to God or spirit. And I need to look at where I am falling short. Yeah. That has to be my project. It has to be our own evolution, is our business. And the thing that, it's called A Course in Miracles for a reason. And miracles happen when you begin to practice forgiveness. Strange things happen out in the world that are completely non-linear, not predictable. And the world does not work the way we have been taught. So we've been taught to try and help people and to try and change other people without ever kind of really going in and looking inside ourselves. And that's really what this assignment is clean up your basement and your own closets first, and everything will change that needs to change.
I love it. Well, thank you. All right.